Mark Lieberman runs TiVo Research and Analytics, and he joins us now from New York with more on this study. Mark, thanks for joining us. And by the way, we should clarify the reason TiVo has a business like this in the first place is to try to give advertisers a better gauge of how people are watching television these days, right?
That's correct. Thank you, John.
So let's get into the numbers here. Nearly 10,000 people who you surveyed who basically said the traditional television they're watching is basically the same if they've got Netflix or not. They're not watching more Netflix at the expense of traditional TV. What do you make of those findings?
Well, what we did is we actually have millions of households of set-top box data that tells us exactly what people are viewing in their home, and then we can match that up to tens of millions of households of what they buy in supermarkets and what cars they have. But we have a subsample of that, which is 10,000 or 48,000 households, and we asked them a survey question because one of the things that we found, and of course we've all been tracking, is that Netflix being in the news, our thesis was, does Netflix cannibalize traditional TV viewing? And what we found is actually quite the opposite, is that for the 28 major networks, broadcast and cable, is that viewership didn't go down at all. Is that people love watching television, and they're watching both traditional linear broadcast and cable, as well as watching Netflix.
They clearly are, though, using streaming services. I mean, I think more than 50% of the respondents are using Netflix, 50% using Amazon Prime, 18% using Hulu Plus, and then I think 8% that are using all three. So even though there might not be cord cutting going on, what we can't really say from this is, are there people who just aren't signing up for cable at all, who are just going directly to these services? So do you feel like we still don't know the answer to that question?
Well, I think at least in our survey results is that we'd call them more cord cobbling, is that people watch their television and then cobble it together with Netflix. In fact, the affinity that we've seen between the subscription video on demand services. So for example, is that Netflix households are 14% more likely to be watching HBO, 17% more likely to be watching Showtime. For the popular House of Cards, Emmy-nominated House of Cards, is that it's about 72% higher affinity with Showtime and HBO, and then an astounding 125% between House of Cards and Showtime's popular Homeland. So what is happening, interestingly enough, is that there's actually competition for the subscribers in terms of content. They love their premium content.
I would assume, though, that you're doing something like this to answer questions for advertisers. If Netflix is creating original shows like House of Cards, if it jeopardizes not just traditional television, but, you know, people who are watching all sorts of services. Are they concerned? Are the advertisers worried about these trends?
Yeah, I mean, the advertisers, what's fascinating is that there is the world of big data, and big data has usually resided in the internet. But now big data is available for television, for both the media buyers and sellers. We've got hundreds of subscribers to our software solution and all this data that gives the media buyers and sellers to find where that right audience is. As it's become a more highly fragmented viewing world, the advertisers want to find where they should be advertising, and big data allows them to do that.
All right, Mark, appreciate your time. Mark Lieberman of TiVo Research and Analytics joining us from New York. Emily, back to you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. John Ehrlichman, our senior West Coast correspondent. As we head to break now, here's a look what's coming up tomorrow.